So you're going to use Adobe Draw or Chrome Canvas on your Chromebook to do digital drawings for lesson 2, which is a visual analysis. So we've done visual analysis before, but we haven't done it digitally. So for example, here is an iPad drawing by David Hockney. So he's done a digital version of this landscape. And this is how you'll open up your screen. You can choose the size at the bottom here, the plus. Click the plus, and you can choose the size of your canvas. Now, the smallest I would work on is an A3 portrait, or you can look through, and the largest is a original draw canvas, this one here, which is 3,600 by 3,600 pixels. So it doesn't really matter which size you work on, but the bigger the size, the better the quality if we were to then, for example, print it in future. So once you've opened up your project, you're going to have a blank document like this. You can zoom in and out by pinching your screen. You can learn the gestures in the top here and under the settings cog, the wheel, where it says learn brush basics and learn gesture basics. So you can watch those, try those. I'm not going to go through those at the moment, so you can try those. I'm going to show you what I would do. On the left hand side you have your brushes. On the right hand side you have your layers. You can insert an image and you can insert draw layers. You do not want to just work on a single layer, so I've just clicked new draw layer. This layer here I'm now working on, draw layer. I can rename it, so I'm going to rename this quickly to color mixing, because I'm going to try some color mixing on here. Okay, so now that layer is called color mixing. I can zoom in. There are different brushes which create different sizes and different looking strokes. So this brush, you can drag up and down on this to change the size of the brush, so the smallest line to the biggest line and everything in between. The next brush has the same settings but creates a different looking line. Apart from the size of the brush, you can change how opaque the brush is, so the opacity, how see-through or not, so how transparent or opaque it is. So if it's at 100, this is going to block the layer above. I'm just going to go back to this basic brush, and if it's say 50%, I'm going to be able to see through to the lines underneath. I can also change the color. This is where our knowledge of color theory that we've been exploring can come in handy. When you click on color, it comes up with a color wheel. You can change the tint, tone or shade at the bottom. You can choose how closely the tint is here by moving the wheel closer to the center. So this is more of a tint of that yellow. You've got all of your colors here, primary, secondary and tertiary colors. You can also break it down into different red, green and blue, or the other colors that you might have used to go back to if you want to use a color again. There are also themes, so you can pick through colors here, and if you like a color you can click plus and it will be saved to your library. So for example, if I choose a primary red, I'm going to bring up the vibrancy, saturation of this so it's as bright as possible, so not a orange red secondary but a red. Here we go. I'm going to choose the opacity of 100. So this is solid. If I wanted to make my own orange rather than just picking the orange here, which I could do, the other way is I could use a yellow, and that's blocked it because it's 100% transparency, opacity. But if I reduced the opacity to say 60 or 50, as you can see, it's still yellow here on the white, but it's more opaque, and because it's see-through going over the red, you have actually made the orange yourself. Every time you go over it, it will go up to 100%, so it will become solid. If I keep going over this, now you can't see through, but earlier I've made my own orange. That might be useful when you do your digital version of David Hockney's landscapes. Rather than just picking an orange, you can blend the colors together digitally with different opacities to create your own secondary and tertiary colours. That's the first thing, how to change the colour, how to change the opacity and change the size of your brush. Now, why do we work on different layers? Well, for example, if I create a new draw layer and I make some marks, say this is an area of grassland, and I want it to be this colour, I could click on the draw layer, I can transform it, so I can scale it up and down, I can flip it vertically or horizontally, but I can also, if I click on the layer, duplicate it, and it's created a second layer. If I click on the layer again and click transform, I can move this layer, scale it, flip it, so it doesn't look too much like a pattern if we're doing a landscape. And now that's on a new layer. It's separate. I can double click the layer to hide a layer, so I can see other layers. If I want to be on this layer, make sure you've got it selected. Say I want to change the color. So I want to change it to a green, maybe a darker green. Any of these shapes that are connected will fill. So if I click and hold, it should fill for me. So let's try that again. Yeah, it has filled that section because it understands that that is a section. So if I click and hold, it can fill sections with your color. A simpler way to show this is if I had an area that was connected, so this is all connected, if I click and hold, it will fill it. So what I'd like you to do is create your own digital landscape, your own visual analysis. You could copy a section. So here I can see these sort of dots on a new draw layer. I could make these dots just by clicking, or I could make these brush strokes. Say I had a texture, and I could start to make those areas on a new draw layer. I can change my color. Maybe this is going to be sort of a browner color. I'm going to make it light and opaque, change the brush size, and here's going to be my tree stump. I'm going to then work in a different color and maybe a slightly more opaque and a slightly bigger brush. So I'm adjusting some of this. You can go back at the top if you don't like something that you've done. And I can start to build up my composition. Currently this is behind it, so if I click and hold, I can bring it in front. Transform this. Maybe I want to rotate this. Maybe it's going to be smaller. I'm going to duplicate this. So you can copy a section or a whole example by David Hockney, or you could find a landscape photograph in your house that you took while on holiday, or you might have a really fantastic view outside your windows and you can do a digital version of a landscape that you can see in front of you. It could even be a seascape if you've got water in front of you. Once you've completed your project, your visual analysis, you can share it. So you can share the image, or you can save it, and then you can link that to the Google Classroom, or you can send it via email. So that is lesson 2, should take you 55 minutes, visual analysis, exploring lines, shapes, textures, colors of David Hockney's work.